Welcome everyone. Glad to see you today, and for those of us who are going to be watching this on film, welcome. My name is Dr. Philip Phillips. I'm Associate Dean of the University Honors College, and this class is our Honors Lecture Series this semester devoted to the concepts of spaces and places. And we have a great lineup of speakers. Today, we have one of our own. I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Vincent Windrow. If you have not seen, last week we talked about our publication Collage, our Journal of Creative Expression. One of our other publications of the Honors College is the magazine Arete, which means excellence. And on the front, very fittingly, we have a photograph of our speaker today. So if you haven't seen this, please take a look at it. Dr. Vincent Windrow is a native of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He's also an alumnus of this university. He's the former Associate Vice Provost of Student Success at MTSU, where his portfolio included early arrival programs, centralized tutoring, supplemental instruction, the Black Male Initiative, an early return program, and the implementation of Quest 2025. He's now retired from the university, and he remains very active. He serves as an educational consultant and speaks all over the place. He's a great speaker, very inspirational. We love having him here. He's also a member of our Honors Board of Visitors. So we were joking around earlier that it's only been a few days since he was last on this campus and in this very room. Recently, Dr. Windrow founded the Friends of Cemetery School, an organization committed to renovating the historic school that served the Black population living near the Stones River National Battlefield until the early 1960s. The aim of the group is to establish a museum to tell the story of cemetery community generally and cemetery school especially. And the story in Arete goes into more detail about that. So have a look at that. Of special note, many of Dr. Windrow's family members, including his mother, attended the segregation-era one-room cemetery school. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Windrow. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
What's happening? I'm happy to tell the story of cemetery school. One, because stories inspire us, right? They connect us. They help us make sense of the world. And on many occasions, we see ourselves in stories. So even if you don't believe in the story of David and Goliath, you perhaps can see yourself as an underdog sometime who prevails, who overcomes odds, who doesn't succumb just because it's been predicted that they would fail. So I'm happy to tell the story of cemetery school because it's really an American story. And I know it's about African American people and Black people, right? But it's really an American story about resilience, about overcoming, about having hope, about not giving up, and about taking what you have and making what you want. Sometimes you don't get off to such a great start, but it doesn't mean you ball up the day and throw it away and wait on tomorrow. So you take what you have and then make what you want. So I am horrible at clickers, and I've always have been. But the cemetery school, from light when it was a school to dark when it was no longer a school to light again during this recovery. So a community comes to be. The cemetery school becomes cemetery community becomes a community after the Emancipation Proclamation. Post-slavery, this community is born. It's born of former enslaved people. It's also born of soldiers, Union soldiers, who fought during the Battle of Stones River. And at one particular time, they were closer to the National Battlefield and Cemetery, but when they wanted more land for the National Cemetery and the battlefield, they purchased at a low price. They purchased the land from both white landowners and black landowners, and it pushed the cemetery community further down Old Nashville Highway. Now, as you can imagine, during that time, those citizens, they were their professions were had something to do with agriculture. But the further they pushed them down Old Nashville Highway, the worse the soil got. Right? So it was rocky, thin soil, not suited for farming. There was an old saying back then, and we don't grow a whole bunch of nothing, but we do grow a whole bunch of rock. And you can see the rock, the limestone on top of the ground. As a matter of fact, about a mile past Cemetery School, there is an old rock quarry. Why? Because they were mining for limestone. As many communities did have and do have, there were 3 churches, a graveyard, and a school, right? All of this was segregated. All of this was during the Jim Crow era. All of this was all black, and there was also a barbershop and a store in that community, in this cemetery community. Well, the community continued to be displaced, to be threatened. Imagine, right, you were just enslaved, no longer enslaved, and there were people around you who didn't want you to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And so there was this terrorist organization called the Ku Klux Klan, which threatened and attacked the people in this cemetery community. And then after the government left and defunded certain areas of the South, then those attacks continued. And it continued to be built by the community's citizens. So whatever funds they had, they pooled their funds, they pooled their resources to help build up this cemetery community. Cemetery School. So about 20 years ago, this monument was placed right in front of the Cemetery School. And it reads, "On these grounds, free people with a thirst for knowledge became educated citizens of the United States of America." In 1874, the Tennessee Labor Manual University, which was funded and established by the Disciples of Christ Church in Nashville, Tennessee, it was established. It was short-lived, but it was the first time that a school, that an educational facility, an institution was established in cemetery community, right? And then when that school left, another school was built, single room, 1 story, and no utilities, and drastic public underfunding, and used outdated textbooks. So let's look at that. In 1915, Tennessee's funding for black students, let's say $5. For white students, let's say $30. So you can imagine what kind of facilities that the black students had. You can imagine what type of books and textbooks that they had and how much they were underfunded in comparison with the white students. Does that make sense? Reasonable to believe during that time, right? That doesn't surprise you, does it? Not at all. Good. So this is a 1920 picture of the cemetery school, right? Some of these students were barefooted, and they were going to that school with 1 room, no utilities, and the like, and using outdated hand-me-down books, with their teacher being underpaid compared to her white counterparts. So in 1940, the Rutherford County Public Education Commission, the Board of Education, said, man, we need to do something about these rural schools. And so they said, let's rebuild them. Well, previously, during the Great Depression, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as part of his New Deal, he said we have to get these young people to work, right? We have to employ them so that we don't lose them. And so he established a component of the New Deal that sent students across the United States to help build schools, to help build teacher homes, to help build YMCAs. And so in 1941, this school was built by the hands of youth, by the hands of students who came to Tennessee to help build it. As you can see here, this is a room where they had supplies and where they had their coat rack. This is the current building. So a new day, 1940. National Youth Administration labor completed in 1941, and it had a Rosenwald School influence. It wasn't a Rosenwald school, but it did have a Rosenwald School influence. Julius Rosenwald. Have you ever heard of Sears and Roebuck? Yeah, of course you have. So Julius Rosenwald was this big-time Sears and Roebuck executive, right? He wanted to do something about black education in the South. And so he teamed up with Booker T. Washington. Anyone heard of Booker T. Washington? He teamed up with Booker T. Washington and traveled throughout the South and built 5,000 schools for blacks. Now, he didn't give all the funding. He gave the majority of the funding, but part of the partnership is that the black community, the people in that area, they had to raise funding too. There were 384 of these kinds of schools in Tennessee. One of the most remarkable philanthropic endeavors that has ever happened in the United States. 5,000 schools across the South, nearly 400 schools in Tennessee as it relates to this partnership. And part of the influence was block school, a bunch of windows on the back for lighting because they had no electricity, a stage at one end, a partition down the middle that if you had enough students, you can have some students on one end and the rest of the students on the other end. Concrete block construction, wired for electricity, one large room with partition and stage. This one, Cemetery School, had 2 outdoor toilets and served 1st through 8th grades, right? So once students from Cemetery School left Cemetery School, they came to town, to Murfreesboro, and went to Holloway High. This represented a new day, and it's still light at Cemetery School. This is my cousin, Ann Clark, at her sixth birthday party, right? And this is my mom at Ann's 6th birthday party. Around 1952, this is right in front of Cemetery School. When we talk about place and space, Cemetery School was a place where these students got shelter and food and education, and it was a safe place for them, right? Now imagine again that your family members, right, were enslaved, right, and lived in a time where all of these attacks, all these threats were taking place. Cemetery School, cemetery community served as a safe place, and Cemetery School served as a safe place for these students. Well, integration and consolidation. Who is familiar with this 1954 decision? Tell me a little bit about it. What was it?
It was a collection of cases brought to the U.S. Supreme Court over segregation in schools.
That's right. And so what was the verdict?
That separate but equal is unconstitutional.
Absolutely. So that happened in 1954. And you're absolutely right. It just wasn't one case, but all of these cases were brought from across the United States to make up this one case, right? So that was in 1954. But like many places, Tennessee was not in a hurry to integrate its schools. And when I say many places, there were some counties in Virginia and Louisiana who shut down their school systems rather than integrate them. I'm talking about shut the whole school system down for everyone just because they did not want to integrate. Well, right around 1960, a survey was done by the Peabody School. Vanderbilt School of Education. And they wanted to see how these schools were faring. What was their condition? What were they doing? And it was deemed that cemetery school was unfit, that it was unsuitable for educational purposes. So they had that finding, and then finally cemetery school closed in 1962, and its students moved to Smyrna at the Rosenwald School, right? So the school shuts down, right? The students moved to Smyrna for 1st through 8th grade, and it's purchased by Washington neighbors. So it's in this community, right? In the heart of the community, the school is. And so what is the Board of Education going to do with the school? Well, they sent out bids. And the winning bid was provided by Bertha Washington and Queen Washington, who lived about this far from here to that wall from the school. And so their winning bid was $400, and they purchased the school. And then the school continued as a community space. It was light, but now it's getting ready to change to dark. Speaking of the Washingtons, this is A.D. Washington. A.D. Washington was the principal of the Rosenwald School in Smyrna. This is his wife, Queen Washington, who taught at the Rosenwald School in Smyrna. This is my grandmother's sister. We call her Aunt Queen. And this is her husband, A.D. Washington. Aunt Queen and his sister, Bertha, they were the ones who had the winning bid of $400 who purchased the school. Well, this is Bo. This is my favorite picture of Bo. This is Aunt Queen and Uncle A.D.'s daughter, who after Miss Bertha died and Aunt Queen died, she took over the stewardship of the cemetery school and really led it through a transitional period. I was born about a quarter of a mile from cemetery school, not in a hospital, but at home, in my grandmother's home. She was my mom's first cousin, and she named me and helped my mother give birth. When I was 5, she took me in, and I lived with her. She had no children, so I was her favorite. She took me in, and I lived with her during my developmental years. This is Stones River United Methodist Church, which sits in front of cemetery school. So 3913 Old Nashville Highway, you'll find Stones River United Methodist Church, one of the original churches in cemetery community. There is a little road that runs alongside of the church, and that's where cemetery school is. This is my grandmother, Ellen Windrow, on my mama's side, and this is my grandfather, Joe Windrow, on my mama's side, and this is A.D. Washington, who you just met a few moments ago. This is Stones River United Methodist Church. Well, the school has closed. The school has been purchased. And for a while, it continued to be a community gathering place. They would have plays there. They would have sing-alongs there, right? And Stones River United Methodist Church still had fellowship time there, homecoming dinners there. But in the 1980s, Stones River United Methodist Church purchased or built their own fellowship hall. And then it became a family storage facility. So this I consider to be the dark period in the life of cemetery school. No more community place, but a whole bunch of stuff. So it goes from having students to being populated by a whole bunch of stuff, right? I'm talking about mattresses and tires. There was a pool table in there, old appliances, baby buggies, baby carriages, all whatever somebody had in their home when they moved, but they needed a place to put it. All of that was stored in the cemetery school. Well, the electricity was disconnected because there was no need for electricity. It was only a storage facility. The roof was patched, but the windows were broken over time. This is that dark period in the life of cemetery school that probably, if we had to frame it time-wise, was about 1984 to present. So about 41 years, something like that. New life. So, Bo Washington died on October the 5th, 2019, right? She was found in her home. She didn't go to church. She went to Stones River United Methodist Church. She didn't show up for church. She was always the first one in the church because she lived so close to the church, right? She didn't show up to church, and so my sister who attended the church, she and another member went up to Bo's and found her dead in her home. One of the things that Bo wanted was to have the cemetery school come back to life, come back to light. So I knew that. So I reached out to Carol Van West. Carol Van West, not only is he our state historian, but he runs the MTSU Center for Historic Preservation here on campus. Carol Van West is a dude that y'all should know. He is walking history, and he has led all of these kinds of rehabs and renovations and resurrections all across the nation. He is a dude that everyone should know. I mean, like, he is really a celebrity in these circles. I reached out to him. I said, hey, Dr. West, I need some help. He said, Vincent, I'll be happy to help. So he assigned a graduate class to look at cemetery school and figure out how to bring it back to life, how to bring it back to light. And so they wrote this heritage development plan about the needs of the school, physical needs on the inside and outside, right? And so this became the development plan for cemetery school, to bring it back to life, to bring it back to light, okay? And so they took it a step further, and they wrote the application for the National Register of Historic Places, and we received that designation, right? So then the Friends of Cemetery School became a registered 501c3 organization, right? So now here comes the life and here comes the light. And when I tell you there was a bunch of junk in there, you know those big trailers that they put junk in? It was 3 long trailers, dumpsters worth of trash and junk and stuff in there. And this just shows you a little bit. This is really cleared out, right? It was packed up, way up here. It took 8 days to get all of that stuff out of there. Loaded that dumpster up, sent it back. They brought another one and did it 2 more times. And so as you can see, as of this picture, there was still a bunch of stuff, old refrigerator, there's old stoves, there's still a whole bunch of stuff. There was still a whole bunch of stuff in there, but we probably cleared out about 85% of it. And you can see these globe fixtures. This was the old blackboard. That's the piano, and then that's the stage. It's a mess, right? Telling the story. So part of telling the story was to raise the profile of the school that once was light, turned to dark, and was becoming light again. And so I contacted Channel 2, contacted Channel 5. They came out, they did 2 stories on it. The Tennessean did a story. The Daily News Journal did a story. They asked me to pray at one of the Tennessee State House of Representatives sessions, which was fortuitous for me because following that, I reached out to some of the House reps there and told the story about cemetery school. So Mike Sparks, and House Representative Mike Sparks, and then Senator Shane Reeves, both of them from this area, they teamed up. They teamed up to make sure that out of this year's budget, the cemetery community and the cemetery school received funds. So I've continued to tell the story about the cemetery school because it's necessary, right? Because if you don't tell your story, someone else will tell your story, and they'll never tell your story like you would tell your story. Why? Because they don't know all the details. And they could turn your story to fit their own narrative about you. So I continue to tell the story about cemetery school, one, because it's worth telling, right? We get to tell the story. If they had not sold the school to Aunt Queen and Miss Bertha, they may have torn it down. And then how would we tell the story then? Who would remember it, right? What opportunities would we have to tell the stories about all the people who came through that school and why it was so powerful to their development, to their maturation, and to their lives? So you have to tell the story. Otherwise, either your story doesn't get told or it gets told in such a way that you would not recognize your story. So I encourage you to tell your own story, to make sure that it is told and make sure that it's told correctly. So what's next? Right now, well, not right now because it's 3:30. Probably earlier, the electricians were out at cemetery school. Think about it. The electricity was put in 1941, right? So that's 59 plus 25. That's like 74 years, right? So as you can imagine, there needs to be an electrical system overhaul. So that's what's happening now. That we have to replace the roof. There are no restrooms. There was an outside toilet, right? So there are no restrooms inside. Have to paint indoor and outdoor. We have to have some type of HVAC insulation, cooling and heating, right? And then windows replaced, the concrete blocks repaired. I met with our construction management people. They're going to come out and repair all of those concrete blocks that are in need of repairing. And then the land cleared and the parking lot added. One of the things we'll do, we'll clear out some space on the land. We want to make it as a cemetery school park as well. So there'll be a couple of pavilions there. What we desire is for people to come to hear the story, right? So on one half, there'll be a community gathering space. Then on the other half, inside the cemetery school, there'll be a heritage room. And so that we can display monuments or display mementos, rather, of people who came to school there. As a matter of fact, I have all of Bo Washington's report cards while she was at cemetery school. This is her first grade report card, 1951. In third grade, now she lived about from here to that wall. She was late 5 times to school. So I think what happened was both of her parents were teachers. A.D. Washington was a principal and teacher down at Rosenwald in Smyrna. And at one time, her mom taught at another school in Smyrna. Then she transferred to Rosenwald. So I think that they had to get up early to go to work. And, well, she kind of lagged behind. But we'll put on display things like this, right? Report cards from 75 years ago. And the cemetery school and the heritage room will also become a repository for everything cemetery community. Pictures, right? Video recordings, audio recordings, right? Of people who lived there and then. So all things cemetery community will be housed in the heritage room at cemetery school. So that's what's next. And thank you. And of course, my board tells me I have to put up there the Cash App. But I left some time so that we could have this conversation about what it looks like now, and what it looked like then, right? Yes, sir.
So you're near a national park, national battlefield.
Yes.
You're going to be able to put out some literature. Or, I mean, will people be able to come to the museum free? And yes or no, either way, will there be something to direct people who come to the battlefield to see the aftermath? I think that would be very important.
That's a great question, Dean Val. And yes, and so we're partnering with the battlefield and the cemetery there for it to be part of the tour, an established part of the tour, right? And so they have literature on the school, on the community now, and on the school now at the park, but it will become part of that tour.
Do we know if any of the African American residents of that area would have fought at the Battle of Stones River?
Yes, so they are part of that population that began to populate that area. Some stayed, some didn't. And then the community lost some residents when they pushed them further down the road, right? And opportunities began to open up around the city, right? And around the area, so some just left entirely. But yes, those are some of the people who became residents of that community. Questions? Yes?
Would you be dedicating the building and or rooms to the Washington family at all?
You know, that is an interesting proposition. One of my sisters asked me that, and I don't know, right? I'm pretty sure there will be a Washington family display, right? And because all three of them were educators. Bo Washington, she taught first grade in the same school for 48 years, Smyrna Primary, right? So all of them were educators. And so it seems appropriate for them, for that family to have a display. Great question. Yes?
Do you think that the historical designation could ever, I don't know, transfer over to the church that's like right next to it?
It probably needs its own, yeah. But that whole area is just rich in history. Because they had 3 churches, a barbershop, a school, a store, and its own cemetery. Yes, sir.
What were the denominations of the churches, out of curiosity?
So Stones River United Methodist Church, a missionary Baptist church, and a primitive Baptist church. Yes? Yes?
The graduate school class that you were talking about, is that still available and offered here?
Yes, it is. It is. Let me see. It's a seminar in historic preservation. Yes.
So you mentioned earlier how there was a whole this large after you got that after that graduate class, after they kind of got that proof to be recognized. Was that like largely a school or solo effort, or was there a community outpour, like people helping out with that? Was that mostly like a niche group-based effort as far as like clearing out all the stuff, doing all the necessary work for preserving the cemetery school? Was that something that you guys had to face all on your own, like within like Bruce, either close to the community or close to the school, or was that or was there other like people helping out with that?
Oh, sure. Great question. So there's the alumni chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. They brought about 10 guys out and loaded some of this trash up and took it away. And then we hired another group to come out and take it all away. And so the Omegas, they're coming back in 2 weeks to get the rest of it.
It's pretty amazing to hear how like organizations from the school are kind of able to like pitch in and be part of recognizing something like that.
I thought so. That's a great story. And I don't think it's a story unfamiliar with my own story or with your story, right? You come up, you face some hardships and some hard times, you battle your way through it, through overcoming challenges and all of that. It's part of that great American story of not giving up, right? And still believing and still having faith and taking what you have, whatever that is, and making what you want.
So when the students were moved to Smyrna, were they bused there?
I do not think so. I think they had to get there because Aunt Queen took some students with her.
And would there have been, at the time, probably not in Murfreesboro, would there have been any one-room white schools still, or would this have been just primarily characteristic of African-American schools?
In rural white South, they face some of the same challenges that these rural black schools face. They received more funding, but not as much funding as their city counterparts. But in terms of how the facilities were made or laid out, I do not know, John.
Any more questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it used as a school today, or is it like a museum?
It's going to be a gathering space. So there's a partition down the middle, and it's an old wooden plywood partition. Like you can just do like this. And so part of it will be a gathering space. It'll have modern technology on this side, but we're trying not to compromise the integrity of the building on the heritage side. Right, and so we'll still have those globes. We'll still have the piano. We'll still have. There are 25 desks from that period, from that 1940 period. They'll be situated, lined up in that heritage room part of the facility.
We had desks like that when I first came to MTSU. It hadn't been that long. We actually did in our class, well, small wooden desks.
Yes.
Some head of the faculty senate decided that we should get new desks for the university.
Good. It's a great idea. Yes, ma'am, and then you, ma'am.
Are any of those churches still active?
Yes. So Stones River probably has 6 or 7 members. Ebenezer, the Primitive Baptist Church, I was about 9 or 10, so 50 years ago, it became obsolete. But there is still another church out there that is still active. Yes?
So would the reservations be through the church or the National Battlefield? Is it still serving as a community space?
No, not right now, but it will be once it's renovated.
And would the reservations be through the battlefield or the church?
Reservations in
Which
church.
if you wanted to hold an event there, right?
Oh, yeah. It'll be through the Cemetery School website. Yes. And there's a Cemetery School Facebook page that keeps everybody up to date on what's happening regarding. I'll be putting that cover shot on there tomorrow. Yes, ma'am.
If everything goes to plan, and we know that in construction it never does, what's the timeline for when it's done?
Oh, it'll be open summer of 2026. Next summer, it'll be open. And that gives us plenty of time. And it'll be done in phases, so the park area will not be done. But everything inside the cemetery school and as it relates to the roof on the cemetery school will be finished by then.
You need to connect that to the semi-quincentennial.
Well,
What a tribute to the Declaration, right? All men are created equal.
how about our plan, the second week in June, is to have a Patriot Camp. As a matter of fact, I'm to meet with Mayor Shane McFarland later on this evening to talk about the Patriot Camp. So when I was growing up, we sang songs, patriot songs in school. This land is your land. This land is mine. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me. Y'all don't know that one? Raise your hand if you know that one. Oh, why didn't y'all join in? Y'all saw me struggling. But there is something about learning those songs. And there is something about being civically involved and volunteering, right? And serving your community. And I think I learned that when I was growing up, right? That was instilled in us. That this is the way you're supposed to behave. This is the way you're supposed to interact with other people. And this is how you show that you are a citizen. When I was in Bible school, there was this word in the Koine Greek. It's called koinonia, right? And koinonia means community, right? It means that you have a sense of belongingness, that I belong here, that this is my school, this is my community, this is my neighborhood, this is my nation. I belong here. But just because you can be in a subdivision with 100 other homes and still not feel like you belong. So it's just not because you're in close proximity to other people, but it is because you know you belong and that you are valued by the other people. That's why in student success language, the first 50 days of school are very, very important. What they try to do is to get first semester students in this koinonia. Because if you are on the perimeter, a slight breeze will blow you away. It doesn't have to be a tornado. Maybe you had a bad interaction with a professor. You get blown away, right? Maybe your boyfriend or your girlfriend back home broke up with you. You get blown away. Maybe you can't find friends right off here. A slight breeze blows you away. So that's why they have all of these activities at the beginning of the school year, right? To get you, to escort you, to usher you into the center of life. So that you say, you know what? I don't care what happens. I'm going to hang in there. I don't care who likes me or doesn't like me. I'm going to hang in here. Why? Because I belong here. This is my school, right? And so all of these activities take place to get you in this koinonia, in the center, in the fellowship, in the community, right? So it's important that we are very intentional, right, in establishing a sense of belongingness, not only for ourselves, but to help other people do the same. So that whole Patriot Camp will, I believe, help young people gain this sense of, you know what? It's not perfect, and we're still maturing as a nation, but this is where I belong. This land is your land. Any other questions? Do you have any? Yes, sir.
So something that really resonated with me that you mentioned earlier was telling your own story as the way that you want to tell, not so someone else is telling it and mangling it as they would see it. And I think that was a very powerful statement. I also kind of thought that tied in really well with like you presenting Mrs. Washington's report card. That's part of the story of the school. And so what I was kind of thinking was in getting those artifacts and telling that story as you saw it and as people close to you had experienced it, was there maybe a challenge in getting all like the necessary artifacts and necessary I'm drawing a blank, but all just getting everything together to show everyone. Was there maybe any sort of challenges or difficulties you guys had to encounter in doing and pulling it all together?
Oh, sure, and it's ongoing. Great question, and it's ongoing. We are still reaching out to former members former students at the school to grab some of this stuff. And like Bo died. Bo was 74, right? My mom died when she was 53. And so we don't have anything like that from my mom to put in the repository, right? And other people, and I was so excited when I found these from Bo, because who keeps first grade report cards? Who does anybody have their first? You have your first grade. I say, oh wow, more hands. But think about that, right? When I was growing up, I'm the second of 7 kids born to an unwed mother. I just found out who my father was last year. I just met him for the first time last year, June 4th, 2024. He passed October 18th, 2024, right? 4 months after I met him, he passed. The Lord works in mysterious ways. So we got evicted a whole lot. Like I remember 4 times that we were evicted from the place that we were staying. 2 of those times we came home from school and couldn't get back in the place where we lived. And so when you think about all the challenges that happen over a lifetime, to have a report card from 1951, that speaks to some stability in her life, right? And it speaks to her wanting to tell a story, that she kept these. It's interesting. Let me ask you this before we go. What else do you think we can do at cemetery school? Yes?
You said you wanted it to be like a community space, so I don't know how big cemetery is, but you could always do kind of like a community potluck where people who are less fortunate have a space to make sure they ensure a meal.
Good.
We had something like that back up in my hometown in Wisconsin, and all the kids that couldn't afford lunches, they would have something, that way they could at least eat.
Thank you. Yes?
You could have something, like especially with the, well, you said it's gonna be open in the summer, but like with colder months coming up, you could do something like a coat drive or something like that for community members who might not be able to buy them.
Good, thank you. Yes, sir.
Maybe more on a large scale, you could use the example of cemetery school as like a baseline to start a national archive of some sort to help other places establish these kind of communal spaces.
Good one. Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
You might be able to integrate it into Tennessee history classes here with the MT Engage or EXL program.
And maybe have like one of their classes there.
Invite school groups to visit, not just from local elementary schools, but students who could identify with children of their age from years and years ago. But we could even organize a group from the Honors College to come over as part of our participation in MT Engage. It's certainly a beyond the classroom activity, and it's a worthy one.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how you make this register, but if you've got any record of students that the Washingtons specifically like touched over the years, since they were all educators for so long, I think that would be a really nice grand opening gesture.
Oh, I see you. Good. Yes.
I don't know how like logistically possible it would be, but like having some sort of thing where it'd be like a high school reunion, except like a cemetery school reunion, inviting people who went through the school back to see kind of what it looks like now after it's been refurbished and all that.
And now that you say that, I'm thinking about a cemetery school Hall of Fame. Yes.
And off of what you said, you could also have the same students like write up personal stories of like ways they impacted their lives and put them up in the remembrance.
And record them too.
Is that videos that can play for like they can watch the videos and put interest in and see how much it truly meant to them?
I'll end, all great suggestions, just last one.
Sure. So something I was kind of thinking of is hearing all these, if like more momentum could be getting built. I know you mentioned earlier, sir, about like news. You guys had some news coverage and got some local news coverage, like stations cover that. But it's if he kind of continues on this upward trend, if they come back and they report on this again, you know, local news reporters in the county, also maybe like even like Nashville or across the state, that could be a big deal. Like, you know, people see all this kind of stuff like all over the news, and nowadays when it's like, especially consider it's kind of, like, as you said, kind of coming back from the light. Like that's a big story that can inspire a lot of people. I can see like, you know, if this was maybe like, you know, put on like, you know, like wide scale news, it would be a huge thing. Also inspire like other similar efforts across the country.
Good, good. I'll leave you with this. In 1986, I was a student here. And I learned this poem. The poem was written by W.A. Drumgoole, Will Allen Drumgoole. Will Allen Drumgoole was from Murfreesboro and had like a writing group here when it was Middle Tennessee State College. The name of the poem is Bridge Builder. And so I want you to think about this poem that I'm about to recite and to see how you, if you're not already a bridge builder, how you can become a bridge builder. An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and wide and steep, with waters rolling cold and deep. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen streams had no fears for him. But he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you waste your strength of building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed this chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. In this path I've come, he said, there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. The chasm that was as naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. That is all of my time. Thank you for yours.